This conversation is all about like it's considering like why do my relationships seem to move too fast or worse fizzle out before we even begin. If so, you're not alone. Many of us navigate the complex waters of dating and relationships, often feeling overwhelmed by the pressures to connect deeply and quickly. But what if we told you that the key to building lasting connections lies not in rushing in, but in taking a step back and thoughtfully assessing and calibrating your relationship dynamics? Today, we're going to go back into a conversation that promises to transform your way to approach connections. This discussion is designed not to just provide answers, but to empower you with tools and insights that can lead to a more fulfilling and meaningful relationship. So, whether you're currently dating in a committed relationship or simply seeking to understand the intricacies of human connection, join us as we uncover a way that I believe can help you navigate the journey of love with confidence, clarity, and purpose. Your relationship journey can be one filled with joy and connection, and it starts here with this transformative conversation. So, with that being said, go ahead and pull out your pens and paper and get ready to receive because these brothers and sisters have a lot to say. Now, me and Garfield, we're going to hit the pause button, and we want everybody else to catch back up, catch up to where we were from last week. And so that being said, I kind of started off everybody off with a question, and that question was pretty simple. And I think you guys have all pretty much heard it, and it has to do with like when it comes down to timelines in dating. So you've heard it that a man knows that he wants to marry a woman when he first meets her. Or, when it comes down to it, there should be a certain amount of time before you guys get married or have made a decision to get married. So, what I would like to ask you guys, poor man's Dr. Phil, Miss Nodella Jordan, Miss Lisa Keys, what are your thoughts on that? What is your perspective of this timeline when it comes down to dating?
Um, can you hear me? Yeah, you can hear me. The timeline. I don't believe there is a timeline per se, but I do think it's important for you to get to know the person who you are dating, or if it goes beyond that, that you can um, sit down and have meaningful conversations that will talk about what your expectations are, because we do have expectations in relationships, um, or your boundaries are in relationships. So we have to sit down and have those conversations, and then when we find that we align with people and take our time to get to know the people, because I heard I don't know who said it the last time we was having this conversation, but people can bring have the representative represent them for a long time before you can identify who they are. So I think you need to see a person in every aspect. I think you need to see a person if they're in distress and how they handle the situations. I think you need to see a person how they handle finances and so on and so forth. So that's my
So,
view.
real quick, before anybody else chime in, you made mention of expectations. When
Mhm.
you say that, what exactly do you mean? Because I'm just curious at this point.
Well, because we're sitting down and we're talking and we're saying this is how we're going to do life together, right? So we sit down and we say this is how we're going to do life together. Then we are there is a so if you go outside of what we said we were going to do, I know we often talk about boundaries, but if you go outside of what we said, what we agreed to, then I think that is an expectation.
Okay.
My mindset with a timeline, and I did share a little bit before, is that I think there should be perhaps a soft timeline, not a hardcore timeline, because making it kind of like etched in stone, you're kind of like locking yourself in and saying, okay, by this time we absolutely have to be there, at that timeline. And during that time of getting to know each other, you can discover, oh, wait a minute, I do need to pump the brakes on this, because I'm seeing some behaviors and, different characteristics that I didn't initially see. So I do agree with the voice of reason, in terms of, taking your time to get to know each other. However, the caveat is I don't believe that it should take 5 years. Not if both of you, first and foremost, are believers. it is my firm belief that when we are believers, the Spirit of God will let us know. And that's where we need to remove the emotionalism. Oh, he's so cute. Oh, she's so cute. Nah, get out of the emotions, because this is what trips so many people up.
Mhm.
That we present ourselves, or most people, not me, and that's a different story. Most people present the best selves to that individual to make a first impression. Me, you get the raw me straight up, because if you can't deal with the raw me, then you can't deal with anything else. And when I say the raw me, I'm not talking about anything crazy. It's just that it's me. I'm not pretending. I'm not going to do a whole lot of other things to impress you, and I don't want you to impress me as we are working towards this timeline. So again, I do believe there should be perhaps a soft timeline of saying, okay, even if you don't discuss it with the other person, I think within yourself, you can say, okay, if I don't see this, let's say in 6 months, then maybe I need to, stop and rethink, or even as the word you use, coaches, recalibrate what I thought I wanted in a relationship. And then at that point, I would say bring it to the other individual. And I had to do that one time of saying, listen, we've been doing this for a minute. We're not where I thought we would be. So they didn't have a response. I said, okay, so I'm done. If they had given me a response, I would have been open to their feedback to say, okay, well, this is why we're not, at a particular place. But because I didn't get a response, I said, okay, so then I'm out. I said there was no reason for me to, continue to spin my wheels. So I believe there should be some sort of a time frame just to kind of also guide the relationship, so you don't get stuck in a dating cycle for 3 and 5 and 20 years. That's not the will of God for us as believers.
Sure, got that. Just want to make sure that I got what you said, because I'm agreeing with the whole 20 years thing. That's just, that's way out there. But I want to make sure I capture what you said. If I heard you correctly, it sounds like what I heard you say was like 6 months is a good gauge. Did you say that, or did I assume that?
Well, that was for me, but it was actually long. I didn't even do a 6 months gauge. This was after a year, because I didn't want to set myself up either. So I ended up waiting after a year. But I would say, again, to be respectful of each other's time. Listen, I'm on the other side of 50. I'm closer to 60 than I am 50. And so for me, I don't have a lot of time to be wasting if it's definitive that we are not it for each other.
Gotcha. And I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but I'm gonna put them on the spot here in a second. Poor man's Dr. Phil, what you got?
Man, I think that growing up, and we know how, as men, how it is in relationships. You go into it looking for certain things, but you aren't necessarily, we aren't trained from a little tad to say, hey, marriage. So we get into situationships, whereas women, you've been dating 3 weeks and she like, hey, what we doing? I got the dress, I got the venue. All you got to do is make sure your mama there. That's how they're wired. And I think we need to start training our children so that both, not just the women, look forward to marriage, but men, and not just look forward to the marriage, but to be marriage material, so that you can be a husband, you can be a wife. And that way, when they're in that dating phase, I'm not spending 6, 7, 8, 10 dates sitting here talking about, oh, I like your eyes, and oh, you got cute dimples and stuff. No, it's that time I get to know you. It's that time that I know whether or not this is worth my time, because I'm like, Nodella, what are we doing? 6, 7 months, 10 months, and we still talking about nothing. We need a plan so that we can know what we're doing, if we're spinning our wheels, or if we're better off as friends. Because if we're better off as friends, I can cut this off now, and we can just be friends, and I can find my future.
So what is your timeline? I think Miss Nodella said about six. I'm sorry, about 6 months.
I, th-
Yours is what?
I think if I'm looking at a timeline, if we've spent multiple dates communicating, we should already know after 5, 6 days, you should know where it's heading. Not that we got to set something in stone, whether it's a relationship or not. Because I don't believe in that, oh, that's my girlfriend, so she can't do this and he can't do that. Nah, as long as they're single, they got their maiden name, she can do what she want to do. She's single. So if she want to date Tom, Dick, and Billy, she can date Tom, Dick, and Billy. Because you haven't made a commitment to where she has to take herself off the market or he has to take himself off the market. So I'm looking at the time frame. 6 months is a long time, but it depends on how often we're spending time together. That we should be able to have a notion whether or not this thing should continue as a couple or we should continue as friends.
Okay, very well. Lisa Keys, what about you? You're muted.
So we're talking about time, and we're talking about the ever popular event of dating. And so one of the things that we've been talking about this off and on for a while. So there is no formal biblical definition for dating, but there is a cultural practice. Dating, a date is the setting of a specific time for developing healthy relationships through wholesome activities, through events which expose the character, nature, and standards of another person. And so when we're spending time together, getting to know each other, these are the things that should be exposed during those times. And so that's one of the things that I thought about when we talk about this dating. I say this dating because it's not a biblical it's not a biblical term. So I just wanted to add that.
Okay, so you said there wasn't no timeline.
No, I said, I remember I responded before Mr. Nodella.
Right, but I thought, yeah. I mean, I just for clarity's sake, I thought you said there wasn't no times.
No, I'm saying that there should be. I mean, you don't want to be in infinity dating someone and then there's no expectation of what you're going to be doing or where you're going to be moving forward. Okay. And so I can't say there is a timeline. I think that's for each individual person who they are in relationship and where they are as far as, do I want to be in a relationship? Do I want to be serious? Do I want to be married? I think that's between the two individuals who are coming together and God, if that's what they're moving toward.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure I got a clear understanding. And so that said, that kind of brings everybody back. I think, Unc, you stated that there is a timeline. And if I recall correctly, you said day one, you putting it out on the table.
Well, my day one, let me clarify. So my day one, what we putting on the table is this. First of all, we date I believe that people should date with intention, right? So you have person one, you have male, you have the man, and then you have the woman. Man knows that he wants to be married. The woman knows that she does not want to be married. On the first date, when y'all first start talking, I believe that they should have a conversation and they should say, hey, do you want to be married? Is this something that you see in your future? And if they do not, one wants marriage and one don't, I believe that they shouldn't go on a second date. This is not to do with any timeline or anything like this. Just only date someone who has the same end goal as you. So that's what I mean by the day one conversation. Now, moving forward, if both of these people want to be married, I do believe that there should be some sort of timeline. What timeline look like, I think it should be agreed upon with the people while they're having a conversation, shortly after, not necessarily the first date, but maybe sometime in the future, say, about how soon do you see yourself married? And somebody say, well, in the next 10 to 15 years, and then someone else may be having a 3 to 5 year plan where y'all may not match. So it's more so about being intentional with the person and making sure that you guys are on the same sheet of music. and you guys come together and you guys determine what that timeline looks like for y'all. Maybe y'all want to get some bills paid off. Maybe y'all want to save some money in case so she can be at home for 5 years while the kid, after the birth or something like that. So I think when it comes to a timeline, I think that the two people should come together and develop their timeline for where they see the relationship going.
Okay, I got you. And me and Gaddy was on the other end of the spectrum, right? So me and Gaddy was the one that said there is no timeline, because people will wear a mask for as long as they can actually keep it on, and then when you mess around and decide that this is what you're going to do, you mess around and, as Beyonce say, put a ring on it, then they start to reveal the true nature of who they really are, and that's the danger with the whole timeline thing, right? And so at the end of the day, you're not living with the person. You only see the person within a certain period of time, within certain scope of reason for X amount of time. Therefore, now when you move forward, well, once you breach that obstacle, once you breach that barrier, once you get to that point to say, okay, this is what it is, now what ends up happening is that you discover another person, the true authentic them, because now you're spending more time with them. Now you're seeing this, now you're seeing that. And it's like, that's not the person I met. This is not what I got into when we first decided to come together. And so, that was kind of like where me and Brother Gaddy was at. So I think that's one of the things that cause a lot of concerns when it comes down to this whole dating thing. And I like the fact that Lisa says that, well, dating is not a biblical concept. It is more of a worldly term that we bring into a biblical place or whatever, and then say this, that, and the third. So I do appreciate everybody's comment. Let me make
Can I
yes,
add one more thing?
absolutely.
So let's flip the script and let's switch it up in a positive. Month 1, things going good. Month 2, things going good. Month 3, year 1, things are going good. Y'all both want to be married. Year 2, things are good. At one point, how long does things have to be good before someone says, "Hey, it's time to put a ring on it"? I know we talked about the negative and different things if it don't work, but what if they do work? What if things are good for a certain amount of time? How long should things be good before they start moving to the next level?
So I think I'm sorry, go ahead.
See, transparency. I was a person in my immature state where I would mimic whatever she said she wanted. As we're talking, she's saying, "Oh, I want him to be like this and like that." So now I'm mimicking that. All the while, I really don't care. I just want what I want, and I'm gonna do what I gotta do to get what I want in my immature state. So we can go along. Then she finds out later, hey, this the real person ain't this person that he's been acting like. This dude been Denzel Washington over here needing an Oscar, and he's really this person over here. And that's where when you're in relationships and you're doing husband duties, you're doing wife duties. That's why all this spending $300 on the date, all this, oh, well, I gotta get this nookie, all these things that is supposed to be for your spouse is something that, hey, hold up, it won't go on for a year, 2 years when you aren't getting, if you think you deserve this as a husband, as a wife, and you're not getting it, it won't even continue. Once you say, okay, these are my standards and this is where I am, if that person is solely in it for the physical or for whatever type of thing, then it's gonna go away real quick.
But I'm saying if someone like, go ahead.
I got you. So I think to your question, the notion of good is subjective, right? So what may look good to this person may not necessarily look good. I think a lot of times what people experience is the presence of drama. And so to them, what looks good is the absence of drama. But the absence of drama isn't good. It's just the absence of drama. So when we say it, things have been going good, does that mean we have not argued? Does that mean, we enjoy being in each other's space when we come together? So we got to kind of like quantify what that good really means. You know what I'm saying? I don't argue with my coworkers when I go to work. Does that mean we got a good relationship? So I think we have to unpack that first within our own mind and then understand what somebody else's perspective of what good looks like. That's why I said what I said last week. It has nothing to do with good versus bad. The question is, can you carry this water I'm called to carry? If you can't carry this water that I'm called to carry, we can be good all day long, but we ain't gonna go past this. So
So
that's
that's what I mean. What
right.
if they can carry the water
Well,
from
so
day one? Like y'all right now.
you
Like,
won't know. There's
no,
no
I'm
way in.
saying like
No,
for right now.
let me finish. Let
All
me finish.
right.
You will never know if they have the capacity to carry the water day one because you're not getting the true person day one.
So
You
you're
will
not the true person on day one?
process. Come on, hold on, wait, slow down, slow down. Process first. Then let me get
Okay.
to the end. Then we can
Okay.
unpack it, right?
All right.
You will never get the person or your understanding of a person's authentic nature day one. It's too soon to even make that assessment. You have to give a person time to see. And I think it was the voice of reason who mentioned what that person looks like in the midst of adversity. How do they handle conflict? Do they turn into this raging monster, whatever the case may be, or are they still that person that they presented themselves to be in the beginning? So now that all of that has been determined, ascertained, assessed, conversation, conflict has happened. We have now got to the point of regulating conflict. Now we can entertain whether or not that person can carry the water, but I need to understand whether or not that person is mental, emotionally stable. Because in most cases, you will never know day one. That's my point. It's too many things to determine when it comes down to the space of interpersonal interaction. That's what I'm saying. Anybody
Okay.
else?
Yeah, so I want to revisit going back to what I said is that with me, you gonna get me day one because I want to even in the vein of most people, they bring their best selves to the table. I don't want to see your best self. I want to see the real you so that I can decide whether this is a lifelong commitment that I want to deal with. And so I remember this was many years ago. Called myself dating a guy. He calls me early in the morning. I was off. And I answered the phone. I was like, what? And he said, hello, can I speak to No Doubt? I said, yeah, this is me. What? And I did that on purpose because I wanted to see how he would handle, because sometimes I'm up late at night till 1, maybe even 2 o'clock in the morning doing what I do. And so I may have just gotten to bed a few hours, and even though he may not have known that, I'm just using this is a real life situation. But can you deal with that? And he said, you're not a morning person. And truthfully, I'm really not a morning person. I prefer to be up at night than in the day. And so he got in his feelings. And I'm like, okay, so if you can't even deal with this little attitude, then you're not even going to be able to deal with everything else that comes with me, because I am an ordained minister. And for those of you who's in the Christian arena, you know what that means. But for those of you who have further understanding, I am also a prophetess. And so I deal with a lot of things spiritually. And if you can't deal with me answering the phone, hey, good morning, honey, then yeah, you definitely will not be able to deal with the other stuff. And like I said, I did it intentionally because I wanted to flush out to see if he was just being his best self to try and impress me. I don't need to see that. You can do that later. I feel it is important that we do bring our true selves to the table, but unfortunately, we know that a lot of people aren't, because they're trying to make a good impression. And so, that's how I handle that. So, coach, I just have to, say on that is that no, I bring the real me to the table day one, and you take it as you want. And like I said, I do that to flush out, to even start a conversation of, oh, well, what, is everything okay? Or, that opens that door also for a conversation as to even my behavior, if that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. And to my point, like I'm not saying that you or anybody else don't. It's just that the other person won't know that day one. It takes time for them to learn that. Go ahead, Roland.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and not to throw a jab at you, Nodella, but doing that to try to test somebody like off the rip, that seems a little like no, that's a game you're playing now. Because if you're trying to see whether or not I'm gonna accept your rudeness, because that's what it is. If I'm gonna accept your rudeness and be cool with it versus check it, because if I check it, then we're going back and forth. But if I'm like, oh, hold up. So now it's like, hold up, is she playing a game? Now, if like me being my authentic self, if we going on a date, I'm coming looking the date part. I'm not coming, I got on jogging pants right now. I'm not coming in some jogging pants and some gym shoes. I'm coming looking like I'm going on a date. So I think people may get the notion that we're saying come with stank breath and hair all out of place and stuff when we're saying our natural selves. Like I will naturally wear cologne and everything to the grocery store. That's just me. But when I'm talking about with people, I'm gonna be me. Like Coach, no, I'm gonna be me. I'm silly. I joke. I don't. We can be at a funeral. We can be at a wedding. I don't care. I'm still gonna be me. And some people may like it. If you like it, cool. If you don't, cool. Because I gotta be me. Because I'm the only one that has to be comfortable with me unless I'm in that relationship. Now, if I'm in that relationship and you're comfortable with me being me, we can rock. But if you're not, I'm cool with that too.
Any other thoughts before we press forward?
I just um I just wanted to say that I understand what you're saying, Coach. That from day one, you're not going to get who the person is. Not for the most part. There could be some exceptions to those rules, but for the most part, a lot of people even when you're in the conversation stage, people are learning and gathering information about you, and they want to see who you want them to be, so they can be what you want them to be. And so you have to, so that's still the person not being their authentic self. It's them saying, I'm going to do whatever it takes for me to get what I want, as Roland was stating earlier. So you have to be mindful that when you're in these arenas, if you are dating, you need to know what the intent of the person is. If someone is in these conversations, you guys are going to be learning a lot about each other. Be mindful of what you're sharing, because you don't want to share that with everyone. So that's all I wanted to add.
No, I appreciate that, and I think that's key, right? I know everybody likes to think that they're being their authentic self, but I would tell you, just being transparent, unless you've done a lot of work on yourself, you're being the version of yourself that you think is your authentic self, and it may look very similar to what it looks like in different spaces, but unless you've done a lot of work to where you got those letters to line up with one another, and the core looks like the mirror, I guarantee you're not being your authentic self. You're just like the voice said, you're being the version that the environment is requesting of you at this point in time. And in most cases, that is exactly what it is. So for me, I always smile when I hear people say, I know who I am. And they'll be like, oh, really? So if you know who you are and you are a believer, how do those things line up? Because if you know who you are and you're a believer, should you not be moving up to where he's at? So that means if this is true, then this can't be true. You're still learning who you are en route to that destination. And that is the truth. So it's like, I get it. And I'm not saying that no one's perspective is wrong. I'm not saying that others' perspectives are wrong. I'm just saying that these are things that we need to consider, right? Because when we don't, it's like we have this tunnel vision that we're doing this thing with horse blinders on, and I can't see anything to the left or right until somebody takes it and open it up. And be like, wow, I didn't see this all before. And so now when you look at it from that perspective, things look different. And that's how I think, Brother Abe, I appreciate you being transparent. That brother said for the past 8 years, I failed at almost all my day ones. What we probably need to recognize is that some people are just lucky. I'm just gonna be transparent. There are people, I know people who met one day and literally got married a month later and they're still together. Now, what the status of that relationship is, I don't know, not my business. But I know they're still together. In our mind, we believe still together means that, going back to Garfield word, means that it's good. But if you was to be like a fly on the wall, you might learn something about what them still being together really means behind closed doors. Because I really do believe a lot of people exist in a space because at the end of the day, they're coping with whatever version of that person is in their life at that particular point in time. And they have a fear of correcting the decision that they made on the backside. I think all of those things tend to be true, which means that it's a lot of variations of this information that needs to be analyzed. It's not just black and white. It's not just cut and dry. And I know we try to make it black and white. I know we try to make it cut and dry, but it's not that simple. So that's why my perspective is what it is. And again, not saying no one else is wrong. I'm just saying that if we can consider those things that I just said as being a fact, then it can't be that simple. It just can't. So just my perspective. And again, Abe, thank you for sharing that. I didn't mean to leave your comment up that long, brother. I apologize. But again, I think there's a lot of people who have that exact same experience. And I think when you look at the pool right now, the pool exists because there's a lot of people that have been burned because they believed in the day one concept. They believed in, hey, I'm taking for what you said as face value. So this is where we're going, just to find out, say, hey, I just got caught up in it. What is it? The Heckle and Jekyll and Hyde thing? Yeah, because this is not the person I thought I was getting into. And at the end of the day, it's too late. So I think that's important to entertain because later on I brought up a concept called relationship calibration. Now, I think relationship calibration is an awesome thing. Now, I know in somebody's mind, they're hearing relationship calibration and they're saying, okay, well, the decision was already made. Not necessarily, because everything is relationship. You relate to every person that you have in your life. You relate to every situation. So at the end of the day, even when it comes down to friendships still need calibration as well. And so when we look at relationship calibration, there are some key aspects that we need to continue. Number one is a continuous assessment that must take place. And what does that really mean? That means that it's not just a one-time event when we're analyzing behaviors as it pertains to our connection. Not saying that your behavior is a standard or my behavior is a standard. The connection is the standard in which we're striving for. There should be mutual feedback. So when we get at the space of conversation, it's not just what one person is saying that is important. It's what both people are saying, as long as it facilitates that connection. The third one is alignment of expectations. Now, I tend to cringe, and I think, Lisa, you mentioned expectations. I tend to cringe at the word expectations because a lot of times what we do is we place expectations on others based upon what the relationship is defined. That's why it's such a push to get to the notion of relationship. I need to know what this means so now I can know what to expect from you. No, you need to know who you are so you'll know what to expect from you. Like, expectations are on me and me alone. If I place the expectations on me, now what I have to do is watch how I move, watch how I behave, watch how I act in the space of every relationship that I'm in. Emotional awareness. I think this is huge because a lot of times we don't necessarily take inventory of ourselves and how we behave in the midst of any given situation. Number 5 is adaptability, and number 6 is conflict resolution. Again, one of those big things that we struggle with a lot in our community. So when it comes down to this whole calibration thing, I just kind of want to put it out there. And Garfield, I know we talked about it last week. Like, do you think relationship calibration could change the way that we approach new connections? If so, or if not, please tell me why.
You said, do you think they can change?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think calibrations can change. I think it's so important for us to understand that if we're in relationship, we're on a journey together. And as you said, you talked about expectations. And so my thought was, when I think about expectation, God has an expectation of me, right? And that's my responsibility to fulfill the expectation because I'm in relationship with him. And so he's telling me this is what you can do, and this is what I don't want you to do. So there's an expectation that he has on me to be in relationship with him. And so when I go outside of that, then I'm breaching the covenant relationship that we have. So I guess that's why I was speaking about expectation. But I do believe that calibration is so important. We have to be intentional in everything that we're doing. We have to listen to what's going on in our relationships. We have to have open communication. And sometimes we have to adapt, coming merging your life with someone else. There's a little bit of adaptation that you will have to do, because that's not easy, to merge yourself and merge your lives together. So I think in those aspects, when you talk about calibration, I think it's essential for us to go back to the drawing board and say, okay, this is what we said, and let's talk about this because this is what I'm seeing. And then that will put us back, in on one accord.
I think that I think calibration is something that has to be done, because when we come into it, like you said, we're at one state, and as we grow, some of the stuff that you thought she thought was cute, she may not have liked it at all. And then when she let you know later on, now you in your feelings because because you thought she liked it. Oh, I thought you liked it. No, she allowed you to do that because she was trying to get along, but now it's kind of overbearing. So I think as you grow in any relationship, there should always be a level of calibration, because there's always a level of growth. And if you're continuing to grow, that means you have to shed some things off. You're continuing to mature. She's continuing to mature. So what used to be cute and funny may not be cute and funny no more. What you used to get away with, you can't get away with now, because no, we're at different stages in our lives. And as the relationship becomes more of a relationship, and then friendships and marriages, you're gonna start to say, hey, I know you used to doing this, but I don't know like that, or it makes me feel a certain way. So now we can have an adult conversation and move forward to where the conversation allows us both to put things out on the table, not to throw daggers, but to say, hey, yeah, that's I don't like this, that. And if we're gonna move forward, I'm looking at this as disrespect. Now, if you continue in that vein.
So, I definitely agree with what Roland and Lisa both said. And, just even going back to what I had did, with the guy many years ago, and in the vein of calibration, I don't do that anymore. I just did it at that point. In order for calibration to be effective, that means that we must be open to growth and development, because who I was, I can't even say I'm not even the same person that I was last year or even at the beginning of this year. Why? Because I'm recognizing that those relationships that are important to me, if they're important enough, and if there's a certain behavior that I'm doing that I know, is causing, friction in the relationship, then I should stop that if I value the relationship. And so for me, calibration, it's absolutely critical. And I know we're talking essentially about, intimate relationships, but this is also applicable to workship, familyship, friendships. And this is something that I have been working on. I didn't identify it as calibration. So I appreciate this conversation in helping me to identify what I have been doing is calibrating. And I also believe that there are moments when we do have to compromise, and I call it a good compromise. All compromises are not bad, that in my opinion. There are some good compromises, but we do have to weigh the value of the compromise in terms of, does it take away from you being able to be yourself just to please the other person? Or, will it still allow you to, continue to be the individual that you are? And so if we don't calibrate, I believe we can look at why so many relationships have not been successful, because we didn't even understand. And I'm grateful that we've grown to this point to even recognize, hey, we need to calibrate. And for those who, don't know what calibration is, I know that His Divine Will had shared the last time. It's like when you take your car in, your vehicle in, and they calibrate, they balance. And so, that's something that a lot of people are not aware of. And hopefully this conversation will bring a lot of people into that awareness, instead of just going through the motions of being in a relationship and just kind of pushing past things without doing that calibration.
Do you think relationship calibration could change the way we approach new connections? If so, how? I absolutely think so. I would just take me and my wife, as we grow. We've been together for 10 years, we've been married for 2, but as we grow and as we evolve, there's a constant shift, there's constant calibration, there's constant adjustment, there's constant evolution. She's growing, I'm learning. You know what I mean? We both got our own personal lives, and we have things outside of the relationship that we have to deal with. So there's always adjustments. But as we calibrate, when I'm thinking of calibrating, someone, used the analogy about going, to the auto shop. You calibrating mean that you're making adjustments to be better, to make things work better and to work more smoothly. So that it can definitely lead or help the way we approach new connections. You know what I mean? Because now, if this is how I'm living on a consistent basis, then that feeds over into my relationships and my connections with Roland and Coach and, the Hearts of Women and different things like that. So I think absolutely. And I just think it can just make other relationships that you have outside of the intimate relationship grow and be better, because you are with that person on a daily basis. So you guys are in constant practice and in constant calibration of the relationship. Sometimes I don't even think that we really know that we're calibrated sometimes. And I think sometimes you can look back and be like, remember when you used to burn water? You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? Like stuff like that. So it's like, not saying shale, I'm just saying in general, I'm just speaking for anything, where, remember when you couldn't paint, you paint the walls and you get, paint all over the ceiling, on all over the everything else. You know what I'm saying? So, and sometimes we, like I said, we don't even know that we're calibrated. But, when you with constant self-reflection and then going back and looking at your past, sometimes we can see those calibrations after they have been calibrated.
Okay, so agreeing with everything everybody said, but I think the last thing you said got after the how, because I heard constant self-reflection. And so, agreeing with what everybody said, I think it does change the way we approach connections, because it makes me conscious of my behavior every step of the way. And if I am conscious of my behavior, then I am also open to feedback of my behavior. So that's part of what that looks like. I think that's the thing where, and I'm just being transparent, there's a lot of people who are seeking to be in a relationship, but they're not open to feedback of their behavior. But if you're not open to feedback about your behavior, you're not looking to be in a relationship. You're looking to control another person's life and make them and manipulate them to get along with your will and what you want to do. That's a very dangerous space to be in. Sister Nobel, I love you. I just don't believe in compromise. I'm sorry. And everybody up here already know that. And I know they started cringing when you said it. I just don't believe in any such thing as compromise, because the word is written and it never told me anything about compromising. And I should not be compromising with his will. So if you want me to do something, and I know what you're talking about, I just want to make sure I put it out there for people. If you're wanting me to do something and I believe it's going against what this is saying, I choose him over you every day. However, that mandates a conversation between you and I, because it also now tells me something that I may not have seen day one. So that's the whole notion in my mind about what that looks like. Again, we are supposed to be looking to come together as one, right? not two separate individuals existing in each other's space, as one. And if we're looking to come together as one, you're not going to ask me to compromise, because you're looking to do the same thing in the direction that we're going back to what I said, carrying this bucket of water. So that's why I wanted to make sure that I kind of um, touch on the aspect of how, because the how piece means that, number one, I am constantly self-reflecting, and I am 100% open to feedback of your observation of my behavior, because everybody have blind spots. Agree, disagree, different perspective. I'm open to it.
So to clarify on what I'm saying about compromising, absolutely. When it comes to the father, oh no, no, I'll stay single the rest of my life if that's the case. But what I'm talking about in the time of a relationship, the compromise I'm talking about is, let's say you want to watch a horror film and I want to watch a comedy. Well, we're gonna have to compromise. Which one are we gonna watch? That's what I mean by compromise. But when it comes to the word and the principles of God, absolutely not. That's a very dangerous thing to do. And yeah, I don't want to be caught in the crosshairs of that kind of compromise.
Any other thoughts?
No, I mean, I would just say it's beneficial for us growing together that we do assessments and then we examine ourselves. It's important, and like you said, I think the most difficult part in that some people come up against is receiving feedback. When you identify, you see the behavior. So it's not to hurt you, but it's to let you know that I see it and I'm not comfortable with your behavior, and you need to make the changes in that behavior. And so, and when you do that, when you recalibrate, when you make the assessments, when you self-examine, when you do your self-examination, that's important, because it helps you continue to stay healthy in a relationship and stay connected, and you're communicating effectively.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Roland, Unc, y'all good?
Yeah, I was just gonna say on this compromise and everything. I think that with the whole calibration, because when I first got married when I was 21, and as a young soldier, 21 years old, when I went and bought furniture, I don't know about y'all, but most of us did the same thing. We bought that black leather furniture, and we got some black and gold tables with the
With the
with
glass
the
top.
glass top. That's, hey, this is a man's house. But then I realized, like, hold up, she wanted it to look more feminine. She wanted to bring some colors in, and I'm like, what? What's wrong with the black? This look good. This, that, and the other. I don't need no colors in my bathroom. All I need is toilet paper. And so I had to compromise to where I got my room. Nobody put in there. I ain't no potpourri going in there. It's whatever I put in there, sports memorabilia and things of that nature. So I think as I grow older and more mature, I realize I like my bathroom looking like a woman was in there, like a woman belonged there. I like colors in the house. I like flowers. I like these things. But as an immature person, it was like, no, hey, I want that black leather furniture, them black and gold tables, and that's that. We can put a two. And I was stuck on that because of how I saw other people live, how I saw other marriages so called work, because I'm looking from the outside. And what I'm doing is I'm thinking that that's what a marriage is versus me sitting up there, coach, I don't know what's going on, but yeah, me sitting up and making sure that what's working is my marriage and what's growing is my marriage.
Yeah, no, y'all don't know about no Holic Mars, like Unc said. Um, so I think I think that's an important piece when we start talking about this calibration thing, right? Because at the end of the day, again, I need to be able to have those conversations. So I think it's good for us to progress forward into this question, because this may peel back the layers of some other things. So, do you, and if so, how do you create a safe space for open dialogue about feelings and expectations in your current or future relationship?
We listen, but we don't judge.
My bad. I'm sorry.
It's pretty much it. I mean, the way to create a safe space is a couple of different things. One is, when you're listening to somebody, you're not there to judge. And when it's your turn to talk, you talk. When it's your turn to listen, you listen. The person wants to be able, since we use the word feelings, the person wants to be able to feel like they can say what they want to say without being judged, and different things like that. I think that another way is to create a safe space is to be aware of your body language, be aware of your tone of voice. All of these things can create barriers in the communication. So if you got your lips rolled out, you got the RBF, and you got your hands folded, there's a lot of different things we can do, just our body turning the other way, picking up your phone, scrolling. Like, all of these things create barriers and don't create a safe place where someone can be open, and have an open dialogue about their feelings. So I just think, those are just some of the things that we can do. And I know I mentioned a couple of different things, so I'll just leave it right there and see what else you guys have to say.
I want to jump
I
ahead
def-
before they do. Oh, because you said listen but don't judge. I'm cool with the listening part, but I'm judged. If I disagree with something, I'm not gonna act like I agree with it. I'm not gonna act like I like it. So we gotta have those tough communications, those tough talks to where I can disagree with you. I don't have to agree with everything you do. I don't have to be cool with it, but I gotta listen to it so that I can listen for an understanding versus listen to shoot at it, listen to talk about it, because I'm judging it. I don't care whether I'm making, because if you saying something I think dumb, I'm sitting up there, I'm sitting there waiting, and I'm gonna explain to you why I don't like it, why I think it's silly, or whatever. And you can't get in your feelings about it. That's where we go wrong. We get in our feelings because people don't agree or people don't roll with the punches with you. No, if we're having tough talks and I don't see it how you see it, you got to be able to listen to me just like I got to be able to listen to you. So there's judgment in there, whether we like it or not.
So I definitely agree with Uncle Junior 100%. Just a couple of things for me personally is one of the things of whether we're public or private, touch to me, I think is very important, by letting them know, that you have my undivided attention. Also again, as the Uncle Junior said, is that I like to make eye contact. I was taught that, when I went to school, always make eye contact when you're speaking with someone. But ultimately, the other thing that I do is, even to Roland's point, but if they say something that I don't agree with, what I do is that I let them talk, and then I say, you know what? Let me have some time to think about what you said, because I don't want to respond, as we've been saying, I don't want to respond just to respond. When I respond, I want you to know that I've given thought to what you said as well as to my response. And for some people, it was unsettling because they was like, well, I want your response now. And I'm like, you're not going to get a response from me right now. If I respond right now, you're not going to like my response because I'm responding out of flesh. I'm responding out of my feelings. So give me that time to think about what you said, the same way it took you time to come up with those thoughts and to express them. I want the same allotment of time to be able to respond, because for me, I'm not looking to inflame the situation. I'm looking to resolve whatever, if there's any kind of conflict or friction, I'm looking to resolve that. So ultimately, that's how I, for the most part, handle especially difficult conversations. I say, listen, give me about 24 hours. Let me think about it. Let me pray about it. And when I come back, usually Holy Spirit will show me what they're saying. And I'm like, that's not what I saw. So if I had responded prior to these other actions, the situation would have just, gone awry. So that's pretty much how I handle conversations like that, by creating that safe space.
Lisa, did you go already?
No, I didn't.
I just want to make sure.
How do you, and if so, how do you create a safe space for open dialogue about feelings, expectations in your current or future relationships? Um, I think you, I think one of the most important things is you have to create an environment where it's welcoming. I'm not judging you, but I'm listening. And then if there's something that we disagree with, those are the conversations that we have to have. I think one of the most important things that I've learned as well is that when you're having these conversations, you don't say you say I, because you are the one who has to do the work on you, because you want to merge with each other, and both individuals are the ones who are supposed to be doing the work. So you're not coming into the conversation and making it more toxic and aggressive and accusing the other person. And so you have to listen. And I think it's important to encourage vulnerability in these conversations. Okay, like saying what I'm saying is this is a safe space for us to have the conversation, even though it may be uncomfortable. This is what we need to do. We need to have these conversations. So I think that that's important. Just making sure it's a non-threatening environment where we can come together, we can talk, and we can have open dialogue, and we listening to each other.
Yeah, very unpopular opinion coming. Um, I'm I've been doing it all night, so I'm gonna just go keep it flowing. Listen,
You see what I put in the chat?
yeah, very unpopular opinion. I've been
What?
saying it all night. It's not going to change. I'm not. Going, I don't have a responsibility to create a safe space. I have a responsibility to be a safe space. So if I've done the work on me, I've done self reflection, I've been working constantly doing those things, then I am a safe space. I don't have to create a safe space. If it's uncomfortable for you, you got to work on you and your emotions and how you feel about what's uncomfortable. Just because me being honest and telling you like the truth, telling you the facts, if that makes you uncomfortable, that does not mean that this isn't a safe space. So I think a lot of times, and I'm going back because I know they do it a lot in kind of like the counseling and psychiatry realm. They talk about creating a safe space. But if you really understand what you're supposed to be doing in your primary relationship, you yourself should be a safe space. So I don't have to create what I'm bringing in the room when I walk in the room. You should be comfortable having conversation, but in some cases, a lot of times, what you'll find is that some people aren't uncomfortable. Some people are uncomfortable because what they're saying isn't landing like they want it to land. But if it's a conversation, don't both people get a turn in conversing? Like you're welcome to share your perspective. I'm welcome to share my perspective. And it should go back and forth as long as we're responding to what each other is saying. So for me, I practice asking questions. I keep asking questions until I get a clear understanding of what you're saying. But once I get that clear understanding, then I respond. I'm sorry, that's a safe space. If I understand what a safe space is, but if me asking questions is unsafe, then I question what the perspective of safety really is. I think, and I wish I had it right here with me. I think everybody need to go and read The Coddling of the American Mind, because I think when you read that book, you will understand how we have been conditioned to take the thing that should contribute to civility, human interaction, and we exacerbate it and make it the most dangerous thing out there. And therefore, if you share what you're saying, then that means I get to use what is called ad hominem fallacy and put a title on you and call you a narcissist or whatever that looks like. And the only thing that person did is tell the truth. That person was just simply honest. They were just simply stating the facts. But because society have given you permission to diagnose someone with no prior experience or education that qualifies you in that diagnosis, now that person is unsafe. That person's a narcissist. That person is gaslighting and all kind of stuff like that. Wait a minute. Whatever happened to dialogue to where people can exchange ideas back and forth as long as they're on topic? So if we go back and entertain that and understand that, now that gets us to the point of expectations. And I just said a few minutes ago, the only expectations I have in the space of a relationship is how I behave. So when I am talking, I am trying to get a clear understanding of what my behavior looks like in that space, especially if you got a concern. If you got a concern, I'm gonna listen. I'm gonna ask questions. I should do all those things. But once I get an understanding of what you're saying, the next thing that comes out is me summarizing of what you're saying or paraphrasing what you're saying. And when I do that, don't tell me that what I'm paraphrasing is not what you're saying, because I just asked like 15 questions to get a clear understanding. So when we go back and understand these things, safe space, the expression of feelings, expectation, those things, I think when we take those things and put them in front of us and look in the mirror at ourselves, then we'll understand that all of these things fall on me to be responsible for my behavior in the space of relationship.
And I think that's what I said. I mean, I didn't know what else I said that was different. I said we have an expectation to.
Wasn't an attack against you.
Okay, I know. I just wanted, I think, I just wanted to add to that. I think that's what I said. We are responsible to examine ourselves in these environments. That's what I wanted to add.
You good? Any other thoughts, opposing thoughts, different perspectives?
Yeah, what's funny is right before you said that, I wrote in the chat and I was like, man, I'm having some different thoughts on this the more I think about it. And that's kind of sort of where I was going, but it's more some of that and then some mix too. I think that, when you say that we have to be a safe place, and you've talking about we've done the work and the self-help and all those different things like that, that means that when someone comes to us, those things I talked about as far as like body language and not scrolling on your phone, giving undivided attention, you're already going to be that already. So like when you said be the safe place, I definitely started getting with that. Because like I've said, it's like, man, I started thinking about this. I was like, I don't know, man. I kept talking about feelings and expectations. I'm like, man, I got to create the safe place. It's like, look, I'm just telling you that, you stink. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not being rude about it. I'm not being funny about it. I'm just saying, hey, look, bro, them arms is kicking like Jackie Chan. You know what I mean? You smell like an onion patch. But I'm not, maybe not that part, but none of those. But if I've told somebody that they stink, then I'm not trying to be rude. I'm not trying to be mean. And if they get offended by it, then that's on them. I am already a safe place. You know what I mean? I was able to tell you something that maybe no one else told you, so I don't know, but I get the whole being the safe place, the safe space versus creating a safe space.
Anytime you're in an intimate relationship, it should already be a safe space.
Absolutely.
Whether or not the temperature is high or low, it should be a safe place, because you don't have those conversations with everybody. And like I think you were gone already when we got a different first sign over there. And he used to, and we having a meeting at 5:30 in the morning, and he would always say something that was crazy to me. And then he would always say, because he had an accent, he said, "Why you make a face? Why you make a face?" I'm like, I think it's stupid. And I'm speaking my mind. You ask me a question, I'm gonna tell you the answer. You may not like the answer, don't mean it's not a safe space, simply because you don't like the answer. And I was telling him I disagree with what you're saying, and this is how we should be moving. And he took it, that whole military, you gotta look stern, you can't look me in the eyes, you can't do this. Well, you don't want to have a conversation with me then. Because if you don't want me to talk, just say that, just write it down, give it to me, and tell me to make that happen. But me in a conversation and expect me not to have an opinion. That's what I think. People think that when you have an opinion on what they said, oh, you're mansplaining me. Now you're this and that. No, you wanted me in this conversation, and when you wanted me, you getting me. And it's a safe space because I'm gonna let you talk, you're gonna let me talk. I'm gonna put PD over there so you know it's safe because ain't nobody thinking about doing nothing to nobody.
Absolutely. Any other thoughts? Okay. And again, remember, this is all about the pre work that must be done for the sake of healthy relationships to exist, right? And I think it's important for us to get to the point of normalizing that. If we can get to the point of normalizing the pre work that we should be done, then people will be postured for a relationship. Then it's not about me trying to sift through the weeds to figure out who you are and all kind of stuff that when we have these conversations, it's seen, it's right there in your face. You can literally have it. I think, and I'm just being transparent, I'm not trying to be ugly. I think some people think more highly of themselves than they ought to, and they think they're ready for a thing that they have not done the work to prepare themselves for. Again, I just like I said 2 weeks ago, it's the reason why Proverbs 31 is written the way it is. It's instructions to the son about what his bride looks like, not striving to be. So when he sees her, he sees that already. And if he is the one that's going to ask her to marry him, then should he not see that? Or we're going to sit here and play this verbal joust because at the end of the day, well, you just can't see, blah, 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 blah. And I think that's crazy. So, what steps can we take as a community to promote the idea of relationship calibration as a norm rather than an exception?
Well, we're doing it right now by having platforms like this. Um, And for those who are seeking to have successful relationships, they have to be open to conversations like this. They have to be ready to accept the hard truth. Everybody wants everything to be sugar coated and everything watered down and stuff. And that's not the reality of life. Life does not sugarcoat anything. It doesn't water anything down. And so we should not do the same in our relationships, although because we didn't have the level of knowledge and understanding that we do now, back in the day, we did for the sake of sparing their feelings and for saving the relationship. But, for me personally, I'm at the point, not that I'm looking to intentionally hurt your feelings or anything, but my pretty much my whole family, my sister's not, listen, we are very upfront. We call it straight no chaser. We speak our mind. For me, I've learned I can be, upfront about how I feel, what I'm thinking, but I don't necessarily have to be offensive about it. And so I just, again, ultimately, I think a platform like this and others creating a space where people are able to hear of our different perspectives, our different experiences, knowledge, and all those things. It's the start of it, but the people also have to be receptive to what that will also look like, and it may not, and most likely won't look like what they're used to, so they're just going to have to calibrate.
I think that one step that we can take is when we have open forums like this, people have to see us where we can have opposing views and actually different opinions, communicate our thoughts without the whole back and forth banner that becomes disrespectful. Because when it becomes disrespectful, it says that it's a norm to be like this and not a norm to actually have communication that actually goes somewhere, that actually can be have different opinions where we don't have to necessarily agree, but we can go along, we can get along and differ and still have that intimate relationship without falling out. So I think that's one of the steps that we can take. Just like my grandkids got to see me and their grandmother have a conversation that may not be hunky dory and apologize one to another or get along with one another to where it's not just always, well, you this, and I'm calling her some dog face this, and she calling me that. See, that's what we've seen in our uh, relationships from people and made it norm. So now when the kids grow up, they think that's norm for them to talk to their spouse or for them to talk to their significant others and to one another, and they think that's what how it should be. So to have communication where it may not be always proper, but always in a loving atmosphere is one step.
I believe in I'm a firm believer in being an example, especially as we start getting older. I think being an example is a great way to display or to show certain things. I mentioned earlier about sometimes we don't even see the calibration. Sometimes as we work on ourselves and we grow together, we look back and we see that we've made strides and our relationship is better because of it. So I think that if couples can do some way of displaying that, being around people where people can see the growth, I think you can even, I think sometimes you may even be able to see it sometimes, when I know we mentioned social media and podcasts and stuff. So like even, on Facebook where you may, low key, kind of follow somebody and see that they're transitioning. I'm not saying that you should put too much stock in someone's couple, but someone can still be together for 10 years and break up. And it doesn't mean that you can't see the calibration or the growth in their relationship. It could just mean that something else happened to cause them to break up. Even in my 19-year marriage, from my ex-wife, where we were day one was not where we were 19. There were some things that grew and calibrated, but there were some also things that got broke down and beat up and overrun and overused and all of those things as well. You know what I'm saying? So it went up and then it went back down. So just because someone has a failed marriage, it does not mean that you can't pull from that calibration. So even, the older people talking to our kids, being honest with them, letting them say that, hey, yeah, me and your mama were right here, but we grew right here. And unfortunately, these things happen, and just, being the example again, if you're in a relationship and, you have kids and stuff like that, display those things. Let your kids and your young adults or whoever like that, let other people in the community see what a good relationship looks like, and let them see, well, I won't say good, let what people see what the calibration looks like in a relationship. And I think that's just one thing.
One of my thoughts when I was listening to this, I thought about community, of course, and it took me to Corinthians when Paul had to come and talk to the people in the community because there were some different behaviors that were being displayed, and he was hearing what was going on. So I think that how we can help in our community is we can say to those people who come to us and have conversations, have you talked to your spouse about this? Have you guys had the conversation? And we can't just agree with them just because. If we know something is wrong, you have to say that to them, because for me, I think that makes you complicit if you don't. If you are agreeing with wrong, then I think that makes you complicit in their behavior. So as a community, if we come together and we're honest with each other, and they're having a conversation with us and they're sharing some stuff with us that we may see that it does not line with what you said you were going to do as far as being in a relationship with God, then I think it's our responsibility to say, well, I'm not going to agree with what you're saying, but have you looked at it this way? And just have those honest conversations that may not be comfortable, but I think for a long time we just agreed with people because people say, well, you're my friend or you're my family, so I'm just going to agree with you no matter what. Well, that's wrong, because you know what's wrong and you know what's right. And so I think that in those times as a community, if we come together and we'll say, no, that's wrong, and this is what we need to, and then you need to consider what you're saying, examine yourself, and then go have the conversation with the person you need to have the conversation with. We can be there to support each other, but we also have to be honest and forthcoming when we're having these conversations.
I do like what everybody said in relation to this. Unc, I like the fact because I wanted to mention it earlier, but you brought it back. When you mentioned that calibration may be happening and it's not necessarily an intentional calibration. You said it's something of that nature. I can't repeat exactly how you said it. And that is a perfect example of what happens when two people are synced together. You also see it to where they end up completing each other's sentences as well, because they're like literally on the same wavelength. So I'm glad you brought that back up because I think that's important for us to understand. When you get to the point where you're calibrating, and that's a natural part of your behavior within a relationship, it's not necessarily a defined thing that we have to put on the calendar. Sure, we may do it in the beginning, but it's not a defined thing that you have to put on the calendar. That is a good sign and a good indicator of your connection. I think as it pertains to community, I'm loving what everybody said because I think a lot of that has to come through like the teaching of the elders. I think, and Unc, I like the fact that you mentioned, and again, I'm paraphrasing because I can't remember exactly how you said it, but just because a person ain't married, don't mean they don't have any value that they can add to the conversation as it pertains to relationships. And I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions that we have. If a person ain't married, they can't give you no relationship advice. That is false. That is wrong. If that was true, that means you should not ever listen to any preacher that stands in the pulpit. Make that make sense. You see what I'm saying? So it's like on one hand, we'll say one thing, but then on the other hand, we'll reject the same thing that we're saying over here. And so what we do is we close ourselves off from some valuable assets that we can actually obtain. Absolutely. To Roland's point, it has to be, I can't remember whether it was Roland or Unc, but there has to be examples in our community for the younger generation to look at. There has to be ways that they can see us model what relationship looks like. It doesn't necessarily have to be a marriage. Again, what do your friendships look like? What do your relationship with family members look like? And in some of those family members that we just can't get it. Listen, we just can't get it. I'm on it. I'm just keeping it real. Like if they choose to do something else with their life and they have no desire to connect, own it and be completely transparent about it. If the kids want to have a conversation, have that conversation. Don't put it all on them. Just hey, we just in two different spaces. That's okay. I appreciate and respect what anybody does with their life. I think we do those things. And here's a big one that I believe wholeheartedly. Stop teaching lessons from the lived experience and teach lessons from the lessons that you learn from your experience. A lot of us we tend to go down memory lane when we start talking about the lessons that we want to teach younger people. Why? They don't really care about your memory lane. Not unless they just want to understand what you and mama or you and daddy's relationship was like back in the 60s or the 70s or the 80s or whatever. But at the end of the day, a lot of us want to go down memory lane and tell our story. Your story is not the major player when it comes down to my life. Give me the lesson that you learned from the story so I can take that and apply that. And so I think that's a huge one right then and there. So again, thank you guys for everything that you said in relation to that. And I agree. Any other thoughts you guys want to add to before we move on? Nope. All right, you guys are all over it. I think it's important. This is the last question before we go into our final thought. What resources or support systems do you think would be beneficial for individuals looking to practice relationship calibration more effectively?
I'm going to jump on here real quick. I'm going to say it's important if you two people are together and they can't calibrate, can't come in to calibrate and with each other, it's important that they have a third party, a mediator. Why are you laughing at me? What did I say?
It just sounded like a part in the background. My bad. I'm sorry.
oh, here. Okay, that's probably Andrew.
I guess I just heard it over this. Yeah.
Okay. So I think that you just so you made me lose my train of thought. But no, I guess that's all I was gonna say.
All right.
The voice of reason, you was talking about bringing in a third party.
Yeah, just bringing in a counselor, someone who can help you, because sometimes in marriages, you're in marriages and you're just existing, and it's not healthy. And so you need, if you identify that there's an issue going on, then you need to go bring in someone who can help you navigate what you have going on, or maybe the lack of ineffective communication that may be happening in your relationship.
But also, what we've been saying throughout tonight's discussion is self-evaluation, self-assessment. It doesn't make sense to bring in a third person if you're not also willing to do self-assessment, self-evaluation, just to re-examine what have I contributed to this relationship to make it successful or unsuccessful to this point. Personally, when I was married, we hit a rough patch and I was like, listen, let's go to marriage counseling. And his response to me was, I'm not going to marriage counseling. I don't have a problem. You do. So I could not have a successful marriage counseling session because he refused to go, because he didn't think anything was wrong on his end. He, felt that it was maybe all up in my head or whatever the case may be. So again, it's critical that we do self-evaluation. I still went to the counseling because I wanted to see if maybe I was missing something. It was my first time being married. I was like 21 when I got married. So that's, on the young spectrum. Didn't know much about what marriage was. Although my parents had been together, they weren't legally married. They were at that point common law husband and wife. Um, they really didn't have discussions with me about what marriage is, because legally they weren't married. And so all I had to reflect on of what my marriage could potentially look like was based on their relationship, which, wasn't always the best example for me. So I still went to the counseling by myself because I wanted to see if there was something that maybe I wasn't understanding, being even more so a young wife. Um, it ended up, unfortunately, not being fruitful for me. So going back to, and I'm just loving this word calibration. I'll probably end up using it a whole lot more than what I was using it before, because I'm really loving it. And so that was something that I had to do, is just kind of keep the finger on the pulse of my behavior, my actions, and things of that nature, to try to help the marriage, to work out. So again, I'm in agreement with the voice of reasons that don't be ashamed or afraid to, seek out a third person, definitely someone who would be impartial, so and that's kind of what I do at this point. Or if you have a trusted friend who, again, who maybe you've seen where they have been successful in their relationships, maybe reach out to them. But I agree that it may be time for a third person.
I think I would say resources would be books as well as people in your life that not only have the people should not just have a relationship with you, but have a relationship with the Most High, because they can tell you some stuff that they want to do or they thought you should do, but it doesn't align with what He said you should do. Now, when it comes to books, you can buy a bunch of books that's going to tell you a bunch of stuff about marriage, but if it's not aligned with how He said in a relationship, it means you no good. It's just you can sit there and read it, but it's not going to do your marriage any good. So those are my resources.
So I'm way I'm looking at this question. It says, what resources or support systems do you think would be beneficial for individuals looking to practice relationship calibration more effectively? So I am thinking that the individual individuals or a person who's in a relationship. Is that correct? No. So it's somebody who's not in a relationship.
Remember, practicing relationship calibration isn't defined by like intimate relationship, like
Okay.
friendship relationships, things of that nature.
Okay. I think I can still roll with what I put down. So I wrote down a couple of things that military terms. One is the confidence course, and the second thing I wrote down was team building exercises. So I think, one of our biggest resources is time. So with time, I think that it's nothing wrong. I think one way to build that we can, how can I say this? I think one of the ways is to be part of it, like to be an active participant in practicing relationship calibration. So what I mean by that is actually doing things in a relationship with someone, doing some team building exercises, having conversations on the phone, with not anybody of authority, but just someone maybe even on your level. So one way that I think that I could practice relationship calibration more effectively is calling up coach and just having a conversation. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm going to learn things in the midst of our conversation. So that's an easy source for some people to tap into, is sometimes somebody to your left and right. So I just think sometimes, when you are working with someone or you practice, the action, and not just, I understand calling and talking and having conversations and listening and stuff, but I think there's also a huge part where there's a population of people who learn better by the hands-on approach. So that's my perspective, is more of a hands-on approach. Get in a running group, get in, with those people that be building houses, Habitat for Humanity, different things like that, and just learn about relationships. And while you there, in a sense, you may learn things about just relationships in general. So that's kind of where I want to go with it.
No, I'm agreeing with you. Actually, all of you guys, because you guys said some great points. I especially like the non-biased party. I think sometimes we go to parties that have no other choice but to be biased. They can't strip their biases, because at the end of the day, that's just who they are. So it's like we need to understand that. And then at the end of the day, if I understand that you have a biased perspective, then I'm not seeking advice from you. I do appreciate that notion of just picking up the phone and calling somebody, and just talking to them and so forth and so on. I will also tap into the other side of it. We need to understand where some people who are not receptive to information, pull the plug. I'm just being transparent. Like if some people aren't receptive to information, don't waste your time trying to force feed them something that they've automatically shut down on. If they shut down on it, be okay with the fact that they shut down on it. Deal with people who are open to receiving the information that you're looking to share, and the fact that you're looking to help. That's something I had to learn a long time ago. And I got to the point that I lost zero sleep behind anybody who said, I can't listen to coach. I'm okay with that. Everybody's not called to listen to coach. So the resources are plentiful. You have groups out there. And again, we need to understand the source from which they're talking, because everybody is not talking from the proper source. They're talking from, sometimes they're talking from unharmonized emotions that they never resonated with and never learned the lesson from it. And then they never practiced the lessons that they learned. So at the end of the day, it's very difficult for them to teach, based upon that pot, because they never turned it over, to so forth and so on. I will say, certain church groups, but again, understand the source from which they're teaching. Again, I got it. Sometimes we say it's Bible, but it ain't Bible. It's Bible-ish, right? It may have a scripture here or there, but when they start telling you what to do, they start telling you things that has absolutely nothing to do with the scripture. Support systems, I believe wholeheartedly, is like the backbone to relationships. I say this all the time. I believe that every married couple, like their friends are the support system, their siblings are their support system, but everybody needs to know their role in relation to that relationship. Sometimes we got to remind certain people what their roles are. If you my sibling, your role ain't to be parent. Your role is to support the parents. That's just it. So understanding the support system, understanding their roles, and then at the end of the day, we seek to practice relationship calibration within the scope of that, because that support system is kind of like what Uncle's talking about, that hands-on approach to it. So that being said, we greatly appreciate that, man. We went a little long tonight. We're not going to do a formal final thoughts. I just kind of want you guys to share your thoughts real quick based upon this entire conversation, because again, you guys were adding such value, and I want to thank you and thank everybody that was in the chats who were actually participating, taking notes, listening, whatever it was they were doing. We greatly appreciate you guys being here. So that being said, let me open the floor up for you guys to kind of share your final thoughts.
I'll start. We talking about unlocking the secret to building long lasting with the bonds. Um, it's like they take work. I was married for a long time. There's a lot of people here have been married, who've been divorced. Um, and I say that to say that they take work. Long lasting bonds, they take work from both parties. Both parties have to be willing to grow and to be a willing participant in the growth of the relationship as well. So it feels easy. Everybody would have great relationships, but you can look on social media at any time and you can tell that a lot of people still struggle with building long lasting bonds. So again, with that being said, it's not, it is hard, but if you do the work, you can get there. And I would tell you, it is well worth it. I have some 30-year plus relationships, almost close to 40-year relationships, and not with siblings. So yeah, it's worth it.
For me, my takeaway, tonight's discussion, as all of our discussions, and I'm not being partial, but I am, because, I've been here with this community, I think about 3 months now, maybe even a little bit longer. Time is moving. The conversations are always relevant. And I just encourage our listeners that when you come to these discussions, always come to gain, because you are definitely going to learn something. And for me, that's what it's been. This has been a learning process. I shared my age earlier, but we need to understand is that it doesn't matter what age we're at, as long as we are open to continuing to growing and developing. That makes you a better person, for however long you're here on this earth. And, that's ultimately my focus. Wherever I can be of help, wherever I can impart and be that support system to others, that's something that I'm open to and I'm grateful for. So, to everyone here on the panel, you know how I feel about you. Y'all are awesome. And let's just continue to bring the content.
And of course, I agree with everyone. I really enjoy having these conversations. I think they add so much value, and anyone who's listening to them, there's so much that you can take away from it. I believe that if you're in a relationship with another person and you guys have the same belief system, there are instructions for us how we should, navigate our relationships in the Word of God. The Scriptures, there are. If you search it and you seek it, He'll show you. He'll show it to you. God will show it to you. And if you are of the mind and you want to be in a relationship, or you want to understand how to be in a relationship with another person, this is a great place for you to come. So because we have these conversations often. We are the Hearts of Women on the panel with the Hearts of Men this week. This week, but we have these conversations every week, and it's a good place for you to come, listen, ask questions, and get some understanding. I think that's what we want to come together to do. That all I get and get an understanding. So I do enjoy these conversations, and I think this is a good place for you if you're in a relationship or you're looking to be in a relationship, that you can find some good information here. So I just wanted to say that.
The scripture talks about the wheat and the chaff, and when it's talking about the wheat and the chaff, what it's talking about how they grow, they both grow together, and sometimes people, you don't necessarily know who they are until, as what they do with the wheat and the chaff, they would throw it up in the air, and since the wheat has substance to it, it will fall back into the thing, the sifter or whatever, whereas the chaff will be blown in the wind or be blown away. Sometimes people in your life, when you go through things and situations happen and the wind blows, they gonna fall to the wayside. They won't be there. And that's why those people you have friendships and intimate relationships with, when things go on in your life, those people that are stable, those people that have substance, they gonna be right there with you. Yeah, you might argue, you may fuss, you may fight, but at the end of the day, they know that it's all love because we have the same father, we have the same connection. So I love this conversation. I'm glad I had enough voice to speak and to listen, because we gained the wealth of knowledge simply by allowing Coach to facilitate this whole conversation. So thank you.
I ain't fizzing argue with you though. Listen, I love all y'all. And that's the truth. I greatly appreciate you guys. You guys are awesome. Not just here on the panel, but in the chats. Greatly appreciate your perspectives. Again, I tried to get to as many conversations or questions that came through the chat as I possibly can. Even if I didn't understand what the question was, I tried to ask questions for clarity. And if I answered, or if one of us had already answered the question, that's probably the reason why it wasn't brought up. But listen, on the, I can't stress it enough. We greatly appreciate you guys. Remember, every Friday night right here, the Hearts of Men podcast. Lisa Dove Washington, Miss I Am Dr. Lisa. She has a great podcast on Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Just go to your YouTube channel, type in the Power of Shut Up podcast or Lisa Dove Washington, either or, and follow her so that you can take part in her conversation. We will be over there on the 19th of December. So we're looking forward to that as well. As always, Sunday at 11:30 Eastern Standard Time on TikTok. Bible study at 2 p.m. Sunday. Tuesdays, we got the Coach's Corner happening at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We will be live this Tuesday, so you don't want to miss it. So again, it's a lot of moving parts over here. Again, we look forward to every interaction that we have with you guys. So with that being said, listen, enjoy the rest of your evening and a great weekend until Sunday. And remember to let the best version of yourself be a blessing to somebody else.